Greetings gamers, I'm Anto, and today I'm going to be running you through the basics of using Fantasy Grounds. I've been running my Pathfinder campaign in Fantasy Grounds for about 3 years now, and given the current situation where a lot of people are looking to move into the online space to play their D&D and other RPG games, I wanted to put together this tutorial to give you an idea of how you can do that. Fantasy Grounds has a reasonably steep learning curve, and even after 3 years there are still some things that I don't know about or use really frequently, but this video will give you all the basics that you need to get up and running and actually start playing games. To start with, you want to open up your copy of Fantasy Grounds, and when you're making your first campaign you want to click the Create New Campaign button. This is going to load up an interface that will allow you to create your campaign by naming it, giving yourself a username. I usually just go with Dungeon Master. You can create a password for your game. Then down here on the left you can select your rule set. Now Fantasy Grounds has a bunch of different rule sets already built into it, which you can see here. I haven't added any of these are just the core rule sets that are included. So we'd go ahead and we'd click 5th edition, and what that will do is it will let us use some different extensions. Now these will change aspects of your game depending on which ones you click. I'm going to click the 5th edition theme from Wizards of the Coast, and I'm also going to choose the fantasy language chat. That just changes some of the languages that you can speak in. It's one that I found online. I don't believe that it's included with the base software, and it's absolutely not necessary. Then over on the right you have your internal and external IP address, as well as your alias information. This is currently blurred out so you can't come and join my games, I'm sorry about that. But what this does is it generates 4 random words that your players can use to connect to your game instead of an IP address. One thing that you're going to want to do is you want to click here where it says connection test. You want to run that and make sure that that comes back successful. If that fails, it means you're going to need to go into your router settings and turn port forwarding on. Information on how to do that, I will leave a link to that in the description so that you don't have to scratch your head about it. But once you've named your campaign and loaded it up, you click start. In my case, I've already got a test campaign, so I'm going to click here on my 5th edition campaign, click start, and it will start to load up the program. Fantasy Grounds can sometimes take a while to load. It depends on the volume of stuff that you've got in your local file. I have 3 years worth of campaign to load every time I load Fantasy Grounds, so it does take a while for me. Once it has loaded up, you'll see this introduction wizard here. This gives you your user manual, the forums, and some information that you might need. I would recommend the very first time that you open Fantasy Grounds, click through some of these and learn some of the common tips and tricks that you might not get in this or other videos. But for now, we're just going to close that down, and you'll see that you're presented with the Fantasy Grounds interface. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the program, I want to give you a little quick tour of your interface. Down here on the bottom left, you have all of your dice that you can roll. You have your different modifiers to change the dice results. You can click on advantage or disadvantage or add common modifiers. And above this is the chat. That's where you'll roll your dice. So if I wanted to roll a d20, I'd left click, drag the d20 over that chat box, and then it will roll it for me and it will show me the result. You might accidentally roll one of your dice up here. If you need to rearrange them, just right click anywhere on the open interface and click the arrange dice option. Down here at the bottom you've got your hotbar. The hotbar is incredibly useful, especially as a player, because it allows you to stack multiple dice and elements of your character sheet in it. So if I had an attack that did 2d6 plus a d8 damage, I could right click on a d6, get 2 of them, put them in my hotbar, and then grab a d8 and put that in my hotbar too. Then when I go ahead and click that, it will roll those 3 dice together. That's going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're playing a wizard class or a rogue class, anything where you're rolling a whole bunch of dice at once. That hotbar is really going to be your friend. Moving around, the bulk of the program is taken up by this big window. This is where all the other elements of the program get put when you're opening them. What I like to do is I like to right click on my chat and unlock its position. What that does is it allows me to resize my chat bar. I make mine as small as I possibly can because all we use the chat bar in my games for is to roll the dice. So I make mine as small as possible and then I drag it right down to the bottom and I lock it in position there. That gives me more real estate on my screen to be able to put different elements. Over on the right, we have all of the different tabs, and we're going to go through each of them in turn over the course of this video. But the first thing that you want to do is you want to hit the library tab. This is going to open up a window that allows you to control a lot of what you see. Now you can see here, there's a lot of information here. At the top left, you can click GM, and that will give you all of the tabs that Fantasy Grounds has decided you need as the Dungeon Master. Or you can click Player, and it will give you all of the ones that Fantasy Grounds has decided you need as a player. Personally, I like to have them all checked so that they all appear on the right hand side of the screen for me, so that if there's any information I need to reference, I have it at my fingertips. Then over on the right, we've got the option to create a PC, which we will go through in depth how to create PCs in a short while. And then over here, we've got the modules. Now the modules are the bread and butter of Fantasy Grounds. That's how they work. What they are is pre-packaged batches of content that control the rules. So you can see here, if I click down on modules, it will show all the ones that I could load into here. Currently, we've got the basic 5th edition SRD loaded in, and we've got the calendars and some of the things that Fantasy Grounds includes by default. If you go and purchase content, let's say you purchase the Monster Manual for 5th edition through Fantasy Grounds, this is where you would load it into your game so that you could use it. So moving on to the top right of the screen here, you can see that there are 8 small buttons. Now the first one is the combat tracker. We are going to cover that in depth when it comes to running a combat later. The next one is the party sheet. This is where you're going to track your player party, award them experience and loot, and keep track of their vital stats. Then we've got the calendar option. Fantasy Grounds does include a variety of standard calendars from different fantasy settings, as well as a real world calendar that you can use to keep a track of events that happen in your campaign. If you have public holidays or events of significance, you can mark them in the calendar. Personally, I don't use the Fantasy Grounds calendar. I prefer to use a calendar that I've set up custom myself in OneNote, but the option is there if that's something you're interested in. Next, we have the palette tool, which lets you change the color of your dice. It might change a few other colored elements, but nothing that I've ever noticed. And then after that, we have the lighting tool. Now this allows you to change the light of the entire environment for you and your players. So if you click on nighttime, the whole screen will start to shift towards blue tones. If you were to click on campfire, it shifts more towards orange tones. This is something I think in the 3 years I've been playing on Fantasy Grounds, I don't think I've used this once. It is a little bit gimmicky for some people. It might help immerse them and make them feel they're playing in different times of the day, but I found that the background interface, I never really see it because I have so many windows open. So we're going to go ahead and switch that back to daylight. And then we've got this plus minus, which is our modifiers. If I open that up, you can see here that I can make modifiers to attacks. I can make it an attack of opportunity, or I can denote that someone's attacking someone in cover. And then similarly with damage, I can make any damage roll a critical damage roll, or max or half the damage. And then this little person icon on the far right here is the effects. That gives you all your common conditions, and you can make custom effects to apply to your players. And then finally, we have the settings option. Now, I really recommend you go through each one of these and have a look at them. There's a lot of different options here. You have a lot of flexibility for how the program behaves. For example, you can choose whether or not your players can see the results of your dice rolls as a Dungeon Master. You can choose whether or not to show the dice roll results, the totals, including modifiers, and you can turn off all sorts of options. A few things that I highly recommend that you enable is to turn off showing the GM rolls. Make sure that is turned off. I know a lot of people like to roll behind the screen, and you want to make sure that that is set up for you to do before you start rolling. And then if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can change how many inspiration slots your PCs have. So you can change it from the standard 1 to 2 or 3. I like to leave it on 2 so that there's a slot for my DM inspiration and a slot for bardic inspiration. But there are a whole bunch of options in the options menu for you to choose from, so do go and look through them to customize the experience to match what you would like. So I personally think the easiest way to learn Fantasy Grounds as a platform is to make a character. So that's what we're going to do together. To get started, we're going to click over here on the PCs tab, which will open up our character selection screen. This is what your players will see when they very first join the game. The character selection screen will come up and they will be prompted to select a character. We don't have any characters at the moment, so we need to create one. We're going to click on this little green add item icon here, and that will add a character sheet for us. Now we can drag this around and place it wherever we would like, and we can also resize it. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, just so it takes up more of the screen and we can see it a little more easily. And then we're going to start creating our character. Now the first thing we obviously want to do is we want to roll some stats for this character. So obviously we need some stats for our character. The first thing we're going to do is come down here to the chat, and we need to select a blank piece of space on the chat, right click and clear that off, so we've got a nice blank canvas to work with. And then we're just going to start rolling some dice. So we'll use the 4d6 drop below, so we'll grab 4d6 and we'll do that 6 times. So what we've ended up with is a 16, a 15, a 10, a 10, a 13, and a 6. So that is absolutely fine. We will go in and we will apply them to our character. The character we're going to make today is a cleric. That will let me show you some of the martial options, but also a little bit of the magic as well. Once we've got our base abilities rolled, we need to add our class, our race, and all the other features. Fantasy Grounds is really powerful when it comes to automation, and it's one of the main reasons that I've stuck with it as my platform over the last 3 years. To show you this, I'm going to go and grab a race. You can see here we've got all of the basic player options here from the SRD, and I'm going to choose Dragonborn because I'm particularly partial to a good Dragonborn. What we need to do now is to drag this Dragonborn option from the Races tab and into our character sheet. Doing that, you can see that the chat will add a whole bunch of options. You can see that the race has been changed to Dragonborn. It's set our base speed to 30. It's changed our strength and our charisma. It's added our ability scores. It's included a breath weapon, and it's added all of those things that come as standard for our race. So if I click over to the abilities tab, you can see that Dragon Breath, our damage resistance, and our Draconic Ancestry have already been added. And that's one of the really strong parts about Fantasy Grounds. You can drag things in and a lot of it will get automated for you. So the next option is to make a class, and we will do that much the same way. We'll click on the Classes tab and we will have a look through the classes and decide on something that we like. I think that we're probably going to go for some sort of cleric build in this specific example, so I can show you some martial abilities but also a little bit of magic as well. So as we can see, our strong saving throws for a cleric is wisdom and charisma. Those are our 2 highest stats, so that's what we're going to go with. So we'll grab cleric here from the SRD data, and again we're going to drag that over into class and level. So you can see it will open up this little window that allows us to choose the 2 skills that we can become proficient in, and I'm going to choose to make our character proficient in religion and in medicine. And then we get to choose a domain. Because we only have the SRD data available, we only have access to the life domain as standard, so that is what we're going to go with for this example. And then you can see down in the chat, again, it has added a whole bunch of automated options. If I go into our abilities tab, you can see it's added our proficiencies as well as some of our class features. The character sheet is broken up into separate tabs. The main tab is where you will see all the core information about your character. The skills shows you all of your different skills and allows you to roll skill checks. Abilities is where you'll find all of your racial traits and your class features. Inventory is where you will keep track of everything your character owns. Notes is where you as a player can keep track of the specific information about your character, so their age, their height, their bonds, their flaws, their ideals, etc. The log allows you to keep a track of your adventures. This is really good for players. This is something that the 5th edition rule set has that the Pathfinder one doesn't, and I wish that the Pathfinder one did, because some of my players can be pretty forgetful, so having a log of their adventures would be really helpful. And then finally down at the bottom you have the actions tab, and that is where you as a player will perform all of your actions, do all your spells, do all your attacks. But before we can do any attacks or any spells, we need to add some weapons and some spells. So we're going to go over to our inventory and we're going to pull up the items tab here. And this will load up all the items that you have access to. Again, all the items I've got here are the SRD materials, so what we're going to do is we're going to change this to the basic rules players, and we're going to change our type to be a weapon, and we're going to choose a weapon for our Dragonborn cleric. I will almost certainly go with a Morningstar. If I click it, it gives me information about the weapon. It tells me the damage, the weight and the cost, etc. So I can grab my Morningstar, pull that into my equipment, and it will automatically add that to my equipment. You can see that it will change my encumbrance, which is automatically calculated based on my strength and the other factors of my character. And then if I go down to the actions tab, you can see that it's already added the Morningstar to my actions. Same with spells. If I go over to the spells tab, it will open a big list of spells. If I change my source to be cleric and change my level to be 1st level cleric spells, I can go in and add those spells. So obviously I'm going to take Cure Wounds. I will drag that into my spell slots. And then I will also probably take Bless as well. We'll drag that in, and you can see that it adds the mechanical benefits for those spells directly to your character sheet. So in combat I can target someone and I can use my Cure Wounds on them and heal them automatically, and it will take the wounds off them. Or I can bless them and it will apply the effects of bless to them automatically. Next, we want to add the background for our character. So we go over and grab our backgrounds and look at the different options available. I'm going to go with the Sage background here, drag that into the background tab, and you'll see that it will add those options in there. It's given me Arcana and History as my proficient skills. It's given me the Researcher feature, and it's allowed me to choose 2 languages of my choice. So if I go down to my abilities down here, you can see that I know Common, Draconic, and then 2 of my choice. So I can change that 2 of my choice, and I will put Elven and Dwarven. So now I know Common, Draconic, Elven and Dwarven. And the cool thing about entering your languages here is, as the DM, I can speak to characters in specific languages. Down here in the chat box there's this little drop down icon here. If I click on that, it gives me all the different language options. And if I choose Dwarvish, provided I have entered Dwarvish as my language and not Dwarven, if I speak in Dwarvish, then this character will be able to understand it. So I could type hello, and to everyone else all they will get is those runes, but to the character that can understand it, they will see the translation of hello or whatever it is that you type. And that's a really good way to immerse your players in your roleplay. You can have characters speak to them in a language only 1 or 2 of them understand, and then they have to translate that to the rest of the party. So that's the basics of our character sheet made. So now we want to give our character an icon to be able to use. To do that, we go up here to this portrait area, click it, and it will open up the available portraits. So I am going to grab the icon for a Dragonborn. These icons are ones that you will have chosen and put into your folder. If I click here, you can see that I can click on folder. That will open up the file location on my computer where I can put these icons. I recommend that you use square or rounded icons and not rectangles, because it can mess with the tokens. But that gives our character their appearance, and we just need to finally name them. So we'll go simple here, just call it Baydar. And that is basically the sheet complete. There are still some little bits that you can add. You could add your bonds and flaws, fill in all your information about your character, but mechanically our character is complete and we can now start adventuring with them. Which brings us to combat, which is probably the biggest thing that you want to learn how to do in Fantasy Grounds. In combat, the most important thing you're going to need as a dungeon master in Fantasy Grounds is the combat tracker. So up at the top right here in these 8 icons, click on the combat tracker and that will open it up, and you are going to be running your combat from this combat tracker the majority of the time. But how do we get our players in there? Well, the first thing that we need to do is establish a player party. So I'm going to click on the party sheet, which will open that up. Click on the PCs tab, which allows me to see my character selection, and then drag my players into the party sheet. That allows me, the DM, to be able to see their abilities and some of their key stats, to be able to give them items, so I can, at the end of an adventure, give them gold and specific items which will spread out among the party. Allows them to set their marching order so that if they are in a dungeon, I can know what order they're going down corridors in. And finally, it allows me to award experience for completing encounters and quests. But before we can have a combat, we need some combatants in the combat tracker. So we're going to grab Bedar from our character sheet, drag him into the combat tracker, and you'll see that will have created an entry for Bedar, and there's all of these different icons. So to start with, we have the avatar, the player token, just to let us know who it is, the character's name, and then we have entries for initiative, the character's HP, their temporary HP, their wounds, a little icon to denote whether they're friendly, a neutral NPC, or an enemy. And then we have options for targeting other creatures, the character's attributes, which will show up here and allow us to make ability checks. We have an offensive tab that allows us to roll initiative for that character, and it will fill it in on the combat tracker. It allows us to see their armor class and see their speed, etc. We have an option here for size and reach. This is really useful for if any of your characters get enlarged or reduced or pick up weapons with greater reach. You can change that here and Fantasy Grounds will work everything out mechanically for you. Then we have the effects option, which is where we'll track ongoing effects for that particular character. And then finally, the little icon on the far right will open up the character sheet for that character or the monster entry for an enemy. So we're just going to unclick all of them so we've got a nice clean look. And to be able to run a combat, we need something for Bedar to fight. So we go over to our NPCs tab, which will open up the various monsters that we have in Fantasy Grounds, and I'm going to start with an Aarakocra. We're just going to drag that into the combat tracker, and by default all the enemies that you drag in will be invisible. This is really handy so that you can add enemies that will be coming in later rounds without your players knowing about it straight away. So let's say the Aarakocra has appeared, Bedar's aware of it. All we need to do is click on the little eye icon here, which will show the NPC, or if there's multiple we want to show, we can toggle all of them at once. So now they're in the combat. Combat has begun. By default, your NPCs will roll their initiative as you drag them into the combat tracker. That is something you can turn off in the options, but I recommend you leave it on because it saves you having to do it manually. So Bedar gets first initiative, and it will say that it is his turn by highlighting his character entry. Now, as a player, you're going to be running combat from your character sheet and not from the combat tracker, because the combat tracker doesn't show all the information to the players, only to the DM. So as a player, if you're in combat and you wanted to target the Aarakocra, you would go over to the target option in the combat tracker and grab the target icon and drag it over your desired target. Once you've targeted them, that then allows Fantasy Grounds to automate a lot of the process. So if I go over to Bedar's sheet here, go down to the Actions tab, I can then use the Morning Star to make an attack. I double click here, it will roll the dice, and it will compare the result to the Aarakocra's AC and tell me whether or not I've hit. In this case, it is a successful hit, so I can roll damage. Again, I can double click the entry next to it for the damage, and you can see that it will apply 3 damage to the Aarakocra. When it comes to the enemy's turn, as the DM, you see a lot more information in the combat tracker than your players do. You can run your monsters almost entirely from the combat tracker without having to open their main sheet. So we'll see here that the Aarakocra has got a whole bunch of different options available to it. So all we need to do is target Baydar exactly the same way as he targeted the Aarakocra by opening up the targeting tool and grabbing this little icon here and dragging it onto a new target. You can see here I've accidentally targeted the Aarakocra itself, so to clear that I just click this little red icon to clear the targets and retarget Baydar. Then I can perform all my attacks just as I would with any other character. So I can use the Talon attack here, and you can see that as I drag my mouse over, it will highlight different areas. Those are the areas I can interact with. So it's got a melee Talon attack, which is an attack +4. Double click that and it will roll a d20 and add 4. That hits Baydar, so I can go to the damage and roll the damage, which will automatically apply, dealing 3 damage to Baydar. When you want to perform a spell, let's say it's Baydar's activation and he wants to heal himself, you can go into the targets, target yourself, and then over here in Baydar's character sheet, click on heal, and it will automate the entire spell-based process. So if you wanted to do an offensive spell, that works much in the same way. Let's go ahead and grab a spell that Baydar could use. Let's, for the sake of argument, say that Baydar is going to use Acid Arrow. You can see that when I drag an offensive spell in, it has a little bit of a different interface. It's got options to cast and do the damage and apply the effects. So if I click the cast button while Baydar is targeting an enemy, down here it will roll to attack. If there are any saves that a character gets against this, it will automate those as well. So if the Aarakocra got some kind of save against this spell, Fantasy Grounds would roll that for me. I don't need to do that as the DM. As you can see, I've got a critical hit with that spell. So now when I click damage, Fantasy Grounds is automatically going to apply that critical damage. I will click it and you can see it rolls significantly more dice. You can see it's rolled the 4 normal dice and it's doubled those up, and those critical dice show up in green to let you know that that is a critical hit. But this automation goes much further than just that. Let's say Baydar had stunned the Aarakocra. So if I go up here to my effects button, open that up and drag stunned over the enemy. Now it will apply the stunned effects to the Aarakocra. Fantasy Grounds will automate all the mechanical benefits to that. So if I try and hit the Aarakocra with Baydar's Morningstar, because the character is stunned, Baydar would roll with advantage, which happens automatically. As it happens, Baydar still rolled really poorly and missed, but you can see how it automates that whole process. And that automation is Fantasy Grounds' biggest strength. As long as you set things up specifically in the way that Fantasy Grounds understand, you can automate huge parts of your campaign and save yourself a lot of headaches. So let's say your character has defeated an enemy and they go and loot the body or loot the treasure room. How do we give them their items? How do we give them their loot? There are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can either open up the character sheet for the character in question and then open up the items tab and manually drag those things over. Or if you want to do some work ahead of time and prep a specific adventure, you can use the parcels option. Now, if I open up the parcels tab here, you can see it is blank. And to start with, all I'm going to do is click this edit list button, add a new parcel. Now what that does is it allows me to add a parcel of coins and items that can be found in the world. So let's say Baydar defeated that Aarakocra who was carrying 3 GP, maybe an electrum piece, 2 silvers and 5 coppers, and maybe the Aarakocra was carrying a longsword. I can go into the items tab, find longsword and drag that into the parcel. So now that we've set up that parcel, when Baydar says I want to loot the body, you have that ready to go. You can drag that into the party sheet and say you have found 3 gold pieces, an electrum piece, 2 silver piece, 5 copper and a longsword. In the party sheet you have the option to sell any items that you found directly, and you can set what price you want them to get, what percentage of the value you want to give to the players. So if Baydar didn't want the longsword, he could say, right, I'm just going to take this straight to the shop and sell it. You could say, well, you'll get 50% of the market value for it and do that straight away. But if you want to give the items to the player, what you need to do is you need to assign a character. So we're just going to type in Baydar, and as we start typing it, you can see because Baydar exists as a character in Fantasy Grounds, Fantasy Grounds knows that he's there and it will suggest him, so we click at the end of it. Now when we click the button to distribute assignments and coins, what will happen is Baydar will get those coins and he will also get that longsword. So I click that and you can see automatically it applies the coins and the longsword into Baydar's inventory. And that's a really great way for distributing things to your players throughout an adventure. Room by room you can make parcels for what they find, and as they discover those rooms you can push the parcels out to the players. Speaking of discovering rooms and playing through adventures, let's talk about maps. Fantasy Grounds has the option to turn any image into a map. So if I go over here to Images and Maps, click that tab open, you can see that by default Fantasy Grounds has a whole bunch of generic maps that you can choose from. We'll just open Battle Map 1 here and you can see that we have our battle map. Now if I right click, I have a radial menu that gives me a whole bunch of options, and what we want is the Layers tool. We click through that and we have the option to set our grid. Now the grid is how Fantasy Grounds is going to work out things like ranges between your PCs and enemies, how it is going to work out whether things are within the distance of spell effects and all that kind of stuff, and it's how your players will move their tokens. So we click set grid and then we can drag our grid to be any size we want. I'm going to hold down the control button and mouse wheel in just to zoom in on the map to make it easier to see the grid that already exists, and then I'm just going to drag my grid to fit. If you find that you've messed up your grid a little bit, what you can do is click up here on the toggle toolbar, click the grid options, and you have options to move the grid alignment or change the grid size to match what you've got on your map. From there we can go back to our combat tracker and we can move our combatants onto the grid. I can drag Baydar on and I can drag on the Aarakocra, and you can see that they are on the grid. I can see the distance between them. I can rotate their facing based on that little yellow arrow, which is really good for things like flanking and for line of sight and things like that. And then I have a whole bunch of other options here. I can push this map out to my players. So I right click anywhere on the map, click on sharing, and then I can share this sheet. What that will do is it'll push the map out to my players and they can view it on their own anytime they want then. I also have the option to resize my map, minimize it, add drawing options, so I can go into drawing mode and draw on the map. That's really handy if you want to highlight specific areas, or I can go into pointers and I can put down different options. So I can put down cones for Baydar's breath weapon, for example. And then this shows you what a typical combat setup of mine looks like. I place my map in the lower right. I have my combat tracker adjacent to it and my chat log so that I can see anything the players type or the dice rolls. Up here I have the party sheet ready and available, and then I open a few different tabs so that I've got options there for me. Usually I'll have the images and maps so I can push out images of monsters. I'll have the encounters tab, which we'll talk more about in a moment, and I have the items tab so that I can put items where I need them. So to finish off, we're just going to run through a few of the tabs that we've not touched on, and I'll tell you how they work. To start off with, we have the notes tab. This is just a notepad. This will allow you to add specific notes that you can go and enter different information. This is good if you want to keep a log of the adventure or make notes about specific things that are going on in the campaign. And you can set these notes to be public, you can share them with the players, or you can delete them. The story tab is one that I personally do not use anymore. I used it quite extensively when I first started using Fantasy Grounds just to collect my thoughts about adventures, but unless you're running a pre-made adventure, I find the process of putting everything in the story tab takes a bit too long. But what it allows you to do is it's basically like a notebook. So it allows you to create an adventure, and then within that adventure you can say the party came across an acolyte. And then what you can do is you can pin specific things into your story. So let's say I say they come across an acolyte. I can open up my NPCs, grab the Acolyte and drag that in. And then from within this story tab, I can open up the entry for an Acolyte and see their stats, or drag it into the combat tracker. And you can do this with parcels and encounters. And for published adventures, it makes running them significantly easier. Personally, I don't use it for my homebrew adventures because I find setting it up takes longer than it would to just set up the individual elements and then use them on the fly. But speaking of encounters, let's look at the encounters tab. If I open that up, you can see, like most of the tabs, it starts off blank and I can add an encounter. Now, what this does is it allows me to drag in groups of NPCs into specific encounters. So let's say I have the Goblin Ambush. I can open up my NPCs, I can search for goblins, and let's say I add 3 goblins and a hobgoblin. I can drag in 3 goblins to bring them in separately, or I can drag one of them in and just change the number to be 3, and that will give me 3 goblins. And then I can drag in a hobgoblin. And what I can do from the encounters tab is I can add tokens to them individually or all at once. So if I open up my tokens, these are all tokens that I have made. So if I search for goblins, I got a couple of different goblin options. So let's go with this one. I can drag it to individual tokens or to them all. And then let's see if I've got any hobgoblins. I don't have any hobgoblins. Have I got any orcs that we can use? I can just use an orc for now, and I can drag them in. And that means that when I put them into the map, so when you're planning a session, let's say you know that this particular room here is where the goblins are going to be, you can drag these tokens where it says placement, and you can place them down on the map, and it will snap to the scale of the map provided you've made a grid automatically, and you can place them. And then when it comes time to run the combat, I click this little button down here and that will add them to the combat tracker. It pushes them into the combat tracker, opens the tracker up for you, makes them invisible to the players, and you are ready to go. So players say, I open this door, and you say, right, okay, you see 3 goblins and a hobgoblin, and you can open up the map, show them the enemies, and they're there ready to go in the combat tracker. The Encounters tab also allows you to keep track of the challenge rating of a particular encounter. So these 3 goblins and a hobgoblin, that comes to CR2, but if I grab my NPCs and was to drop an adult black dragon into there and recalculate, you can see that it's now a CR15 encounter. That's a really good quick way for you to get an idea of whether an encounter is going to be balanced, and it will also add the XP for that. So if I just remove the dragon, because that's nonsense, and open up my party sheet again, you can see on the XP tab I have options for encounters. So now that I've made the Goblin Ambush, I can drag that over into the party sheet and get it ready to go. So once Badar has beaten those goblins, I can award him his XP automatically, and it will add the XP for that encounter automatically. The quests tab is very similar again to the story and note tab. It just allows you to add quests to your game, so you can give it a CR, an XP value, and add details about the quests, and then when the players have completed that, you can drag it into the party sheet and award the XP for completing that quest. And then finally you have the tables option. This gives you all the different tables that you might want to use in your game. It'll give you critical hit and critical fumble tables, things like your Acolyte bonds, flaws, ideals, all that kind of stuff, all in table form. So there we have it, an introduction to the Fantasy Grounds system. There's a lot more to cover in Fantasy Grounds. I haven't even scratched the surface of some of the more advanced features of the program, but I wanted to give you a good baseline to get up and running and to just start playing games on Fantasy Grounds. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, because it helps to tell YouTube that this content is worth putting in front of other people and helps new people find the channel. If you are new here, hit the subscribe button, because I release new D&D, world building and tabletop related content really frequently. But until next time, happy gaming.
Thanks for watching. If you're new here and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. I release a new RPG, tabletop and world building related content every single week. And if you enjoy what I do here and want to help the channel grow, consider supporting me on Patreon. And if you want to keep watching, I've got another couple videos over there. But until next time, happy gaming.